still pray for you guys, YouTube family. I have 5 powerful sermon Bible audio study. Here goes. God bless you.
Welcome back to The Deep Dive. Today we're looking into a creature that's really at a fascinating crossroads of myth, biology, and some pretty deep theology.
We're talking about the biblical Reem.
Which most people, I think, know by a very different name, the unicorn.
Right, and that King James translation. It's really obscured a profound point for centuries. When you hear Reem, you have to just strip away that image of a dainty white horned horse.
So it's not a fantasy animal.
Not at all. Historically, scholars suggest the Reem was likely a huge, fearsome wild ox, probably the now extinct aurochs.
Okay, so think massive, ferocious, completely uncontrollable, not something from a fairy tale.
Precisely. The power isn't cute. It's terrifying. And the specific animal isn't even the main point. The point in the ancient mind was always what it symbolized.
And that was?
Fearless, unstoppable, untamed strength. The sources are so clear on this. No human could tame it, no rope could hold it, and this is critical, no plow could force it into human service.
Power outside of our control.
Exactly. Power outside of human manipulation.
Okay, let's unpack this. Our mission today is to figure out why God chose this specific wild creature as the perfect picture of his strength.
And more importantly, this to you.
Right. So we need to follow this metaphor through that untamed power is supposed to work in our lives.
In the first place we see it really sets the stage for radical action.
So we'll start with this foundational idea from the text in Numbers. And the premise is simple. When God acts, he gives strength, not, weakness.
Yes. Numbers 23.22, it's describing the Israelites' exit from Egypt. The text says, God brings them out of Egypt. He hath, as it were, the strength of a Reem.
So right away, divine action is compared to this creature.
And we need to remember the context here. This wasn't just a group of people moving house.
No, this was 400 years of brutal systemic slavery. They were broken, demoralized, completely powerless against the greatest empire on earth.
That contrast is everything. God didn't bring them out with, let's say, gentle encouragement or fragile support. He used Reem's strength.
A power that cannot be bound, period.
Think about that. A slave who is completely bound is delivered by the power of a creature that is defined by its inability to be bound.
That's a huge shift in perspective. It means the very nature of deliverance is, it's wildness.
It is. It's power that breaks chains. Power that walks through an impossible sea. A power that no pharaoh, no empire can stop. It's not calculated or constrained.
And if the power that frees you is untamed, then your freedom has to be absolute.
It does. It means the enemy pharaoh in this case has no way to reclaim or retame what God has just set loose.
So let's bring that back to you, the listener. The idea here is radical. When God delivers you from something, a past struggle, an addiction, he gives you Reem strength.
Wild strength.
A force that cannot be tamed by your history or your circumstances. It's a definitive.
And that kind of deliverance, it leads right into the next step of the source material. Authority.
Right. If that untamed power frees you, the question becomes, how do you live in that freedom? How do you wield it?
And that takes us to the symbol of the horn.
Here's where it gets really interesting. We move from the strength of God to the authority given by God.
We see this so clearly in Deuteronomy 33.17. It's talking about the horns of Joseph's descendants being like the horns of a Reem.
And in the ancient world, the horn wasn't just decorative. It meant power, aggression.
Dominion. The horns are symbols of victory and authority. They're for pushing, for breaking through whatever is in your path.
So it's not passive strength, it's active authority.
Exactly. The text connects those horns to dominion, breakthrough, and authority in the spirit. This suggests that when you operate in this kind of strength, you're not moving with your own human ability.
You're moving with heaven's delegated authority.
But that raises a question, doesn't it? If the Reem is totally wild and untamed, how does that fit with God's order? We're told to be disciplined, but this metaphor is all about wildness.
Doesn't that risk chaos?
That's a crucial tension. And it's why the metaphor is used so carefully. The wildness doesn't imply chaos. It implies sovereignty. The strength is untamed by man, but it's completely submitted to God. It only recognizes one master.
So when you move in that authority, your enemies can't predict your response based on human logic.
That's it. It makes the implications incredibly practical when you're facing something that just won't budge. Fear, sickness, whatever it is.
The source material is all about removing constraints.
Absolute removal. The devil cannot tame you. Fear cannot bind you. My favorite image is that generational curses cannot ride on your back.
Like it just shakes them off.
It's meant to shake off burdens. You're empowered with a strength that is, by definition, unstoppable because its source is divine. It moves you past barriers that human strategy just can't overcome.
Okay, but this brings us to maybe the most complex part of all this.
It does. It raises a question, I think. If this power is so mighty, so desirable, can we? Can we harness it? Can we force it to do our bidding?
That's the human temptation, isn't it? To try and capture that power for our own ends. And to explore that, we have to look at the book of Job.
Specifically, Job 39. In this passage, God challenges Job directly, and he points to the Reem as evidence of his sovereignty.
Right, he asks these rhetorical questions. Will the Reem serve you? Will he stay by your manger?
Can you bind him with a rope? Will he plow your fields after you?
And the answer to all of these is a loud, resounding no. But why is plowing the ultimate symbol of control here?
Because it's about routine, and it's about production on a human schedule for human goals. When you bind an ox to a plow, you are taming its wildness for your own predictable profit.
So the Job passage is confirming that this divine Reem strength will never submit to the yoke of human manipulation.
Never. And this really pushes back against a lot of modern ideas about accessing divine power. God's strength cannot be domesticated.
He can't be bought.
It can't be controlled with a formula or a ritual. And it certainly can't be faked. Any power that you can tie to your manger and force to plow your field is, by definition, not the power of the Reem.
It's a profound lesson in submission, really. The strength is only available when you surrender control, not when you try to seize it.
Exactly. It's not for our entertainment or our ego. It's solely for his purpose, his glory, and the deliverance of his people.
And this leads us to our final segment. What happens when we invite this untamed power into our own personal weakness?
That's where it gets very personal.
Yeah, this last piece of the puzzle deals with personal elevation, especially when you feel completely overwhelmed, like you just can't lift yourself up.
And that brings us to Psalm 92.9. It's a personal declaration from David, the shepherd who became king.
And what does he say?
He says, "But my horn, you shall exalt like the horn of the Reem." He isn't just talking about a raisin status. He's proclaiming a supernatural rising, using this irresistible force.
So the focus shifts from national deliverance, like in Exodus, to a very individual experience. It's a promise of being lifted with force when your own effort has failed.
The application to our own weakness is so important. David is speaking from a place feeling small.
And the text gives us these incredible contrasts. When you're tired, this power lifts you.
When you're weak, it strengthens you.
When you feel insignificant, God gives you the horn of victory. It's this direct replacement of human frailty with divine ability.
And the distinction between self-help is massive. You don't rise by your own willpower or just by grinding harder at the plow, to use that metaphor again.
You rise only by Reem's strength.
The power to break through every enemy when you are surrounded, lifted by a force you don't control, but one that is wholly committed to your breakthrough.
So to bring it all together, what does this integrated metaphor really mean for you?
Well, the biblical Reem isn't a fantasy. It's a powerful, interconnected picture of God's mighty, untamable authority and his unstoppable strength.
And it's offered to his children.
Precisely when they need it most. For radical deliverance, for authority over obstacles, and for that supernatural lift above their own natural limits.
So the ultimate promise we get from the source material is this. You will conquer in Reem victory. Not by your might, not by your ability,
but by the wild, untamed, holy power of the living God.
That kind of strength changes everything. It shifts your whole trajectory from weakness to unstoppable movement.
And as you think about how to apply this knowledge, here's a final thought for you to consider. Since this strength is defined by its untamable nature, a power that absolutely cannot be bound or forced into human service, what part of your life are you currently trying to plow? What are you trying to bind with your own human effort and predictable systems, when all the sources we've looked at suggest true breakthrough only comes from submitting to a wild, sovereign power you cannot possibly control? Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we are stepping into one of the most powerful, and I think it's fair to say one of the most sobering images in all of Scripture.
Definitely sobering.
We're going straight to Revelation chapter 6, verse 8. We're talking about the pale horse. So if you're familiar with the four horsemen, you know the progression. You have the white horse of, conquest, the red horse of war, horse of famine.
Right. They all deal with human systems, really. Conflict control.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But this fourth one, it just stops everything cold. It's different. It's not just that the rider is named Death and Hades is right behind him. It's the color. The description is pale.
Ashen, sickly. It's a really jarring image.
It's the ultimate visual cue that the party is over.
And that arresting image, that's really the stage for our mission today. Because yes, the pale horse announces mortality, it announces judgment for everyone.
Yep.
But that's not the full picture. The true deep dive here is finding the hope that's presented right alongside it. We have to look at the terror of this horseman only to discover the absolute total sovereignty of the one who holds the keys to everything that horseman thinks he controls.
All right, so let's unpack that, starting with the color itself. Why that specific word? I mean, pale. It suggests sickness, a draining of life. What does that choice tell us?
The color choice is absolutely crucial. John doesn't just use a generic word. The Greek word he picks is chloros.
Chloros. That sounds like chlorophyll, like bright green.
Exactly. That's what you would think. But in this context, it's the exact opposite. Chloros here carries this heavy meaning of a sickly, pale, and sort of grayish green. Think about the color of vegetation that's dying, or the color of a human face when it's just drained of all life by illness or even just stark fear.
The color of a corpse.
The color of a corpse. It is explicitly the color of mortality. And it's not just about death. In classical Greek, they'd use chloros to describe someone who was, critically ill, or how someone looked when they were just paralyzed by fear.
Wow.
So when John picks this word, he's delivering a very clear message. This horse is the herald of decay, of pestilence, of that cold touch of mortality that humanity is always, always trying to outrun.
That makes so much sense. It's the consequence of the first three. The conquest, the war, the famine, it all culminates in this one sickly final image. And that brings us to the rider. The first three are more like concepts. But this one gets a name. He's called Death. Why give this figure a proper name?
Because death isn't just a process, it's the conclusion. I mean, conquest fails, wars end, famine runs its course. But death is the universal entity that claims everyone.
The great equalizer.
He's the ultimate enemy. He's the one that breaks families, that stops all human ambition in its tracks. He is the end of the line, which is why God in this vision wants him named, called out.
And as if that's not sobering enough, he's not right. Hades followed with him. So, okay, if death is taking the body, what exactly is Hades doing?
And that's the 1-2 punch that makes this so intense. Hades here represents the grave, the realm of departed souls. It's a temporary holding place.
But it's not the final judgment.
No, not the final judgment, which is more often called Gehenna. That's a critical distinction. Hades is the immediate consequence. The implication is that this horseman, this team, is responsible for both body and soul. Death takes the physical body, and Hades is the collector, the jailer almost, who receives the soul into that waiting realm.
So without Christ, the path is just linear.
Yeah.
Death gets the body, Hades gets the soul, and you're just waiting for judgment.
That's the devastating picture.
But this is where the whole thing shifts, right? Because it's not just random chaos. The text is very clear. They were given authority. This is a commission. It's limited.
That is the crucial theological anchor here. This isn't just bad luck. It is God administering a righteous judgment. And that authority is, it's both delegated and limited. The source material draws this really clear line back to Ezekiel 14.
Okay.
In Ezekiel, God talks about his 4 severe judgments. And the instruments listed in Revelation, the sword, famine, pestilence, and wild beasts, they line up perfectly.
It's not an accident.
Not at all. It's meant to be comprehensive. You have external violence with the sword, internal scarcity with famine, invisible danger with plague, and then nature itself turning against you with wild beasts.
So when the pale horse rides, it's in his full arsenal. It's basically saying that when sin rises to a certain point, judgment rides out to meet it.
Exactly. And this is so important. Even in this incredible display of wrath, there's an astonishing measure of restraint.
The 1/4. The horse is only allowed to affect 1/4 of the earth.
Yes.
But let's be honest, that's the part that's really hard for people to grasp. 1/4 of the entire Earth's population. That sounds like absolute catastrophe.
And it is catastrophic wrath. But it's wrath under sovereign control. If death had unlimited authority, well, that would be it. The end.
Right.
The very fact that it is constrained to 1/4 is the proof that God is holding back the total annihilation that could justly happen. The limit itself is the evidence of mercy inside that judgment. It's a severe warning, but it leaves room for repentance.
It's a terrifying vision, no doubt, but constrained. So let's bring that back to us, to you listening. Why show us this? What's the fantasy that the pale horse is meant to smash?
I think it crashes through our illusion of permanence.
Yeah.
The universal fantasy we all live in is that death is far away, that judgment is something we can negotiate later, that eternity is a problem for another day.
We spend our lives preparing for temporary things.
That's it, exactly. We prepare for a career, for a wedding that lasts one day, for a retirement that might last a decade if we're lucky. And the pale horse just looks at all of that and says, you're preparing for everything that stops at the grave, but you're ignoring the one certainty in your life. It forces you to face 3 non-negotiable truths. Life is short, death is certain, and eternity is coming.
So it's less about sheer terror and more about urgency.
Precisely. The vision is meant to snap us out of our complacency. It's a call to prepare your soul with the same diligence you'd prepare for a job interview because the clock is always ticking.
Okay. So here it is. This is where the whole narrative pivots. And this is the absolute core of our deep dive. Because if the book of Revelation just ended there at chapter 6, we would be completely hopeless.
Just staring at that sickly, pale face.
Yes. But the pale horse is emphatically not the final word. We have to jump for the height of judgment in chapter 6, all the way back to the declaration of victory in chapter 1.
And that transition from fear to triumph. It's everything. Our hope isn't in avoiding the horseman. It's in the power of the one who rides higher.
Wow.
And the text for that is Revelation 1:18. This is Christ speaking. He says, I am he who lives and was dead, and behold, I am alive forevermore. And I have the keys of Hades and of death.
Let's just sit with that language. That's the defining contrast. The pale horse has the power to kill, but Jesus holds the keys. That distinction is everything.
It changes the entire paradigm. Power, like the horseman has, is delegated. It's temporary. It can be limited. But keys are a symbol of absolute sovereignty, ownership, access, control.
He owns the place.
He owns the place.
Yeah.
When Christ says he holds the keys of Hades and death, it means he controls the lock. He controls the front door. The horseman can swing his sword, but he can't open or close the door to the grave unless Jesus allows it.
So death might carry out the sentence.
But Jesus controls the prison. He's been there, he's conquered it, and he walked out, proving that even Hades, the collector, has to hand over the souls when the true owner shows up.
That is the practical application, then, for someone who trusts in Christ. The pale horse might ride to your door. Death may take the body. But because Jesus has the keys,
Death is no longer a jailer, he's a doorman.
wow, he just becomes a servant, opening a door into glory, not leading you into the grave.
Exactly. Jesus swallowed death and victory. For the unbeliever, the pale horse is finality. For the believer, it's just a transition from this life into the presence of the King. It's not an end, it's a doorway. We don't fear the horse because we know our destination isn't the grave, it's heaven.
So the resurrection really does change everything. It transforms our entire view of mortality, of this ultimate.
It means the entire sequence, all 4 horsemen, they're already superseded by the Lamb who opens the seals in the first place. Conquest, war, famine, death. They still happen in the world.
Sure.
But for the child of God, those paths now lead toward victory, not punishment. Christ's sovereignty is the antidote to all the terror you read in Revelation 6.
Okay, so let's distill this for you. Let's get to the essential takeaways. This vision of the pale horse, it's meant to create this sense of urgency, but also purpose and mission in a believer.
That's the perfect way to frame it. When you look at this incredibly sobering vision, you're meant to come away with 3 powerful truths that demand action.
Okay, what are they?
First, life is fragile. The horse's speed proves that. So the takeaway is live for Christ now, don't delay.
Right.
Second, eternity is real. Hades following death confirms it. Therefore, the gospel has to go out to everyone with urgency because the consequences are eternal.
And the third?
And third, Jesus is victorious. He holds the keys. Therefore, we are victorious. We can face this world without fear, knowing with absolute certainty that the grave cannot keep us.
So the pale horse rides to remind all of us that life is brief and judgment is real. But for the believer, because Jesus holds those keys, death can't hold you. Hades can't claim you. The grave can't keep you.
That's the bottom line. When you think of the terror of the pale horse, remember this distinction. Death has a name and delegated power for a season. But Jesus has a greater name, and he reigns forever. The Lamb who was slain is the same victorious Lamb who opens the graves.
Welcome back. Today we are going to do a deep dive into a really fascinating prophetic message.
A very powerful one.
Yeah, it's been circulating quite a bit. The revelation of the silver horse. We're looking at some source material that, well, it weaves together two of the Bible's most potent symbols.
And that's our job today, right? To figure out why this specific combination is being called, a defining message for this generation.
Exactly.
That's absolutely right. And when we say silver horse, let's be clear, we are not talking about a literal animal.
No, not
or some new mythological creature. Our mission is to dive into the scriptural context for both of these symbols, the horse and the silver, and really pull out the insight.
The insight for you, the listener.
For you, it's about where divine power and personal purity, where that action and character are meant to intersect in your life right now.
Okay, so let's unpack this immediately. Because the moment you combine these two symbols, the meaning, it just shifts. It goes from simple definitions to a powerful mandate. We know the horse in Scripture. It consistently represents action. It's about power, movement, judgment, a divine assignment. It is never, ever passive.
And then the silver provides the context for that power. It has such a deep theological root, representing redemption, purity, refining.
And value.
And inherent value, yes. It really speaks to the quality of the vessel itself.
So when you fuse these ideas, the immediate takeaway, and this is the core message we see in the source material, is that God is raising up a generation designed to, and I'm quoting here, move with my power and walk in refined purity.
That's it. It's an immediate appeal, isn't it? For anyone who knows they're called to move but feels, stuck in a season of testing.
It connects that big divine mandate to the internal reality.
Exactly. And I think that's why it's hitting so hard right now. We live in a world that just values speed and power above almost everything else.
Right.
But this prophetic word, it insists that the quality of the vessel, the purity, is what dictates the quantity of the power you can carry.
That sets the stage perfectly. So let's start with that momentum, the movement. Let's talk about the horse.
Okay.
When we look at the horse in the sources, it isn't just a beast of burden. It's like the physical manifestation of heavenly intent. It carries, it wars.
It delivers. A horse is the symbol of divine movement in action. It's the agent of momentum. If we turn to the Old Testament prophets, specifically Zechariah.
Chapters 1 and 6, right?
We've got chapters 1 and 6. We get a very clear picture that these horses are not just earthly military units.
Can you tell us a bit more about that context? Because I think that's where the idea of an assignment really gets solidified.
Well, in Zechariah 6, the prophet sees these 4 chariots, and they're coming out from between 2 mountains of bronze. Each one is pulled by different colored horses, black, white, dappled, and bay.
They're not just like wandering around.
Not at all. These are not grounded earthly forces. The text says they are going forth from standing before the Lord of all the earth. They have a mission. They patrol and roam the earth. They are heavenly scouts carrying out these divine decrees.
So they're carrying out specific heavenly assignments and what, reporting back?
Providing intelligence back to the throne room. Precisely. They confirm the message. My will is already moving. Nothing on earth can stop what I release.
So the horse signifies this irresistible sovereign momentum that's already happening, maybe behind the scene.
Exactly. And that should provide immense comfort and, focus for you if you feel like you're just waiting for something to happen.
What's really fascinating here is the connection between the horse and, well, raw strength. We think of a horse, we think of power. But the scriptures, they complicate that idea right away.
They do. And this is such a critical detail. We misunderstand the symbol if we think it's about our own power.
Human power.
Right. Psalm 33.7 gives us that essential contrast. It says, a horse is a vain hope for safety. Neither shall he deliver any by his great strength.
That is a sharp warning. It's saying, don't rely on your own military might or your self-sufficiency.
It doesn't matter how great your plan is or your resources or your talent, your personal horse. It's not enough for ultimate safety.
It's entirely vain.
But when God sends a horse, when he assigns a people to move, he is emphatically declaring, this is my strength, not yours. This power is inherently divine. It's beyond human ability, and that makes it unstoppable. It moves with a confidence that our own effort just can't replicate.
So the horse represents the irresistible assignment when it's backed by God.
Yes.
Okay, so if the horse is that irresistible external momentum, then we have to ask, what's fueling it? What is the standard that makes that power worthy to be released? And That, of course, is where the silver comes in.
The transition from the powerful exterior, the horse, to the valuable interior, the silver, is just seamless in this prophecy. Silver isn't just a metal. Prophetically, it's the material of purification.
Of value and testing.
Exactly. And the most profound image of this, for me, is in Malachi 3:3, the refiner sitting over the fire.
And this isn't just a metaphor for being uncomfortable. It's a very specific, very intense process being described.
It is intense, it's painful, but it's absolutely intentional. God says he sits as a refiner and purifier of silver. Now, to get silver truly pure, you have to heat it
Really heated.
intensely. You melt it down to a liquid. And as that temperature rises, all the dross, all the impurities, they rise to the surface.
And then they're skimmed off.
Yeah.
That process, the heat and the skimming, that feels like the spiritual experience of pressure, doesn't it? It exposes our flaws.
That's the part that hurts.
Yeah. When the heat gets high enough that your secret struggles, your inner battles are suddenly just out there,
Yeah,
exposed.
absolutely. But think about this. Why does the refiner sit? He's not pacing, he's not distracted. He sits because he knows the silver is only truly pure when he can look down into that liquid metal and see a perfect reflection of himself.
Wow.
That's the core message for you. I am refining you for the assignment ahead, molding your character until I see my image reflected back at me, untainted.
That completely changes how you see your refining season. It's not punishment, it's preparation. It's character forming for the mission.
And that leads us right into silver representing value. In the ancient world, silver was often the currency standard. It meant established worth.
And we see that connection in the story of Solomon, which the source material brings up.
Yes, in 1 Kings 10:29, it says Solomon acquired horses with silver. The horse, the vehicle of power and mission, was bought with the commodity of worth.
So the assignment itself is valuable.
It is. And the vessel receiving it must be worthy of that investment. The message is clear. You are valuable to me. Your calling carries a heavenly worth. It required a significant investment, both of the refining process and ultimately of redemption.
And speaking of redemption, we can't really ignore the darker side of silver's role in the New Testament.
No, that's the final crucial piece of the symbol. Silver represents redemption. Tragically, it's the price of betrayal, 30 pieces of silver. But even in that, it still defines the cost of reclaiming what belongs to God. Silver marks the sacred value of the one being rescued and the price that had to be paid to bring them back. This whole refining process is ultimately tied to that redemptive work.
Okay, this is where it all comes together and gets really compelling. We bring the symbols together. The silver horse message is fundamentally about the sequence.
Yes, the sequence is everything.
Refinement precedes assignment. Purity unlocks power.
This is the critical insight. It's what separates this from just another generic call to action. The source material talks about the characteristics of a silver horse people.
And what are they?
First, they have to be a people purified by fire. That's the silver. They are tested, sanctified, washed, proven vessels that can actually handle the pressure.
And only then, once that internal foundation is set, do they become the people assigned to move with power. That's the horse.
And that's the release of authority, of speed, of movement, and that heavenly assignment we saw in Zechariah.
You know, it makes sense. Power without purity is just dangerous.
It's so dangerous. A powerful, unrefined vessel can be self-destructive, or even worse, carry a corrupt message. God doesn't just want powerful movements, he wants clean movements.
So we have to talk about the context of powerful horses in end-time prophecies. I mean, the first thing people think of is the four horsemen in Revelation 6.
The ones bringing war, famine, judgment, death. Yes.
So how does this silver horse relate to that?
Well, this contrast is vital. Why the intense stress on silver and purity right now? The source material is very clear that the silver horse message is about preparation, not destruction.
Okay.
Before judgment is fully released, before the final great moves of power are deployed, God has to prepare his people. He has to cleanse them.
So it's an internal process that comes before an external deployment.
Yeah.
It's God making sure the riders he sends out, the people he sends, are clean vessels.
So they accurately convey his purpose, not their own motivations or their own wounds.
Exactly. It's about cleansing my vessels before releasing his riders. So if God is turning up the heat in your life right now, it's because he intends to increase the speed and the weight of the assignment later.
The preparation time ensures the vessel doesn't break under the pressure of the power it's meant to carry.
That connection is just so powerful. It makes the struggle make sense. Okay, let's pivot now to the practical side. For you, listening, What does it look like to actively submit to this? What specific impurities is God trying to remove so you can shine like silver?
This is the application, isn't it? To shine like silver, the process has to target that deeply embedded spiritual and emotional dross. The sources point to a few key areas that stop the horse from moving cleanly.
Like what?
Doubt, the kind that makes you hesitate, fear that just paralyzes you, and the residue of old wounds, of offense, of unforgiveness that weighs your spirit down.
Those always feel like such private battles, things nobody else can even see.
They are. We're talking spiritual heaviness, inner conflicts, the spirit of comparison, those secret struggles that have kept you completely stationary. The refinement is designed to bring those internal contaminants to the surface.
So they can be removed.
So they can be removed, making your foundation stable and strong for the road ahead.
So then, if we submit to this, if we go through this difficult purification, what comes next? What's the release? When God finally says mount up, what should you expect?
The release is, well, it's nothing short of a divine upgrade. The purification process directly unlocks the power phase.
Okay.
This means stepping into a new assignment, but with new strength, new speed, and importantly, new authority. You gain a prophetic insight that was just, obscured by all that dross before. You step into a renewed kingdom purpose.
So it's a total equipment refresh. The internal work leads directly to external effectiveness.
Yeah.
So what does this all mean for your daily purpose? How do you apply this?
It means you shift your focus. You stop trying to just accumulate power and you start focusing on maintaining purity. At the end of the day, you stop carrying your own burdens, your own message, trying to move in your own limited strength.
You become equipped to carry His.
You're equipped to carry His message, move with His power, and operate by His Spirit. That alignment, that purity and power working together, that's the definition of the Silver Horse generation.
This has been an incredibly insightful deep dive. Let's just do a quick summary of the identity revealed here. This is about you and how you're defined by the intersection of your character and your commission.
Exactly. You're refined like silver, so you're tested, valuable, proven. You're strengthened like a horse irresistible, moving with divine power. And you're sent like a heavenly messenger equipped for a global assignment.
And this season, this purification, it requires more than just passively waiting for the fire to stop, doesn't it?
Oh, it requires an active, willing submission. This process is not passive. It demands surrender. The call we see distilled from the source material is really a prayer. Lord, refine me. Lord, strengthen me. Lord, send me.
It's only through that surrender.
Only through that surrender can the promise attached to the whole mission be fully realized.
That is a truth worth dwelling on. So here's the final provocative thought for you to consider this week. If refinement is necessary before assignment, what specific inner battle or hidden struggle are you being asked to surrender now to unlock the authority of the horse ahead?
And the promise isn't just the speed and power.
And no, it's the intimate presence that makes it all possible. I will ride with you.
That's the real promise.
Thank you for joining us for this deep dive. We'll be back soon with more insights from the cutting edge of Revelation. Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're zoning in on a single but incredibly dense piece of scripture, Psalm 9, verse 1. And we're analyzing a sermon on it called Wholehearted Praise, the Path to Testimony. We're really trying to pull out the insights that define a very deliberate way of life.
Right. And just to set the stage, the verse itself in the New King James Version is this really concise dual commitment. It says, I will praise you, O Lord, with my whole heart. I will tell of all your marvelous works.
It's almost a 1-2 punch, isn't it? Internal devotion first, and then it has to lead to this external declaration. It's like an instruction manual. So our mission today isn't just to, read the verse. It's to get to the very heart of what that declaration means.
Exactly. And the sources we're looking at frame this as, well, not a prayer or a suggestion. They call it a definitive decision, a commitment, even a spiritual posture. So we really have to unpack two big questions. First, what does it actually mean to praise God with the whole heart? And second, why is that kind of praise basically a prerequisite for a public testimony?
Okay, let's jump right into that first part then, because it starts with something we don't always think about when it comes to worship, and that's choice. The sheer power in those two simple words, I will.
That's what just leaps off the page in the analysis, the deliberate language. I will praise you. It is so firm, so active. And the sources really stress that this isn't just, being in a good mood. It's not, I might praise you if my stocks go up, or I'll see how I'm feeling later. It's a definite, solid, I will.
And that is such a critical pivot for anyone listening. Praise, when you look at it this way, is not just a reaction. It's not just a response to good things happening right now. It's presented as this solid decision of faith, and it's rooted in God's character, not your circumstances.
Absolutely. If you only praise when you feel like it, you're essentially letting your emotions run your spiritual life.
Yeah.
And that's volatile, to say the least.
So this decision becomes most important then when things are not going well.
That's when it's paramount. The sources point right to those moments. You know, when a financial storm hits, when a relationship falls apart, or your heart is just heavy. If praise was only for the good times, it wouldn't take any faith. And honestly, it wouldn't have nearly as much power.
But when you stand there in the middle of a total mess and you declare, I will praise you, something shifts. The analysis, we're looking at positions that act that declaration as a proactive strategy.
It does. The source even uses the term spiritual weapon. And what that really means, I think, is that you're seizing the narrative. You're choosing to focus on a truth, God's goodness, that seems to completely contradict the facts on the ground. And that choice, that conscious act, just redirects all your spiritual and emotional energy.
And the context of who wrote this, David, just proves the point, doesn't it? He wasn't writing Psalm 9 from, beach chair and retirement. Mm-hmm. He wrote this after going through horrible battles, persecution, just immense personal.
It proves that I will is rooted in memory. It's like he's saying to himself, I remember what God did before, and because I saw his character then, I can trust him to be the same now. So the praise is based on history, not just a vague hope for the future.
That is a really strong foundation. And that deliberate decision just raises the bar for what comes next. Which brings us to this idea of wholehearted commitment versus, half-hearted worship.
Right, because David doesn't just say, I will praise. He says, I will praise you with my whole heart. The analysis is very clear on this. It means worship without your phone buzzing in your pocket, devotion without side idols. It's love without being double-minded. It's giving God your full attention, your full affection, and your full trust.
In today's world, that sounds almost impossible. Our attention is so fractured, we're constantly pulled in a million directions. So the half-hearted way is almost our default setting.
It is. And the source brings up this almost economic idea. It suggests that if you make a half-hearted spiritual investment, you're going to get a half-hearted spiritual return. It makes sense. If you show up distracted, holding back, worried about 10 other things, you can't really expect the full benefit.
So if that's true, what happens when we slip it? What happens when we actually offer that 100% wholehearted praise?
That's when the transformative results kick in. The analysis says that when God gets your full undivided attention, the entire spiritual atmosphere changes. It's not just a mood lift. It's described as an unlocking. And the examples they give are really powerful. Chains break, fear has to leave, joy comes back, peace just fills the room.
Okay, let's pause on that for a second. How does the source explain why that happens? How does fear leave when we focus like that?
Well, the insight is that fear really thrives when we're obsessing over the problem, right? When we're focused on ourselves and the crisis. Wholehearted praise is the ultimate act of refocusing. You're shifting your attention from the size of your problem to the size of your God. So the crisis is still there, it's still real, but it just shrinks in comparison. The chains break because your perspective and your commitment have been radically altered.
It reframes the whole thing. And the big takeaway here for you, for the listener, is that this is accessible to everyone. The source is so clear. God isn't looking for perfect people. He's not. He's looking for wholehearted people. People who, despite all their flaws, just choose to give him their full attention.
That is such a critical distinction. It moves the goal from flawless performance, which, let's be honest, is impossible for any of us, to total commitment, which is always a possibility no matter what's going on.
And once you lock in that internal commitment, it seems it can't just stay private. It has to go somewhere. Which brings us right to the second half of that verse. Source calls the obligation of testimony. That powerful phrase, I will tell.
Yes, according to this analysis, true wholehearted praise just can't stay silent. If you've genuinely experienced God doing something meaningful in your life, the sources argue you are, in a way, spiritually compelled to share it. You have to.
So if the I will praise is the internal engine starting, the testimony, the I will tell is the external proof that the engine is running. And the effects of that public declaration are just huge.
They really are. The source breaks it down into 4 critical outcomes. First, and this is fascinating, it defeats the enemy. The idea is that your personal story of victory has real spiritual authority, and that any opposition wants to keep that story quiet. They want you to keep it private, where it feels powerless.
And second, just the act of telling the story. It reinforces your own faith, doesn't it? You're hearing yourself state the evidence out loud.
Exactly. You turn a feeling or a memory into a solid fact in your own mind. But it's not just for you. Third, and this is huge, your story can be the catalyst for someone else's breakthrough. It shows them what's possible. It's tangible proof that faith isn't just a theory.
And the fourth, which is sort of the ultimate purpose, is that it glorifies Jesus before the world. It plants seeds of faith. Your personal story becomes universal evidence.
And the analysis is very direct about this. It's not a passive thing. It encourages you, the listener, to be intentional. Tell your family, tell your friends, your coworkers, use your social media. The scope is massive. If God has been good, we have a spiritual and even a moral obligation to make sure that story gets out.
That obligation to share brings us right back to the foundation of it all. Why? Why did David do this? Why should we? Which is segment 4, the foundation, God's marvelous works.
It's because David recognizes that God isn't some abstract concept. He is a God who is defined by his actions, by marvelous works. The source material really drives home that this isn't vague theology. It is about specific daily interventions in our lives.
And to really feel the weight of that, we need to get into the specific examples of these marvelous works that the source lists. It's quite a list.
It covers every part of life. I mean, it starts with the ultimate one. He saved your soul, your eternal destination is secure, but then it gets incredibly practical. He healed your body when you were sick.
And it covers those moments of total gridlock in life too.
Oh.
He opened doors that no person could shut. And what about protection? He protected you in storms. He provided for you when you had nothing left.
And it doesn't stop there. It even covers our failures. He forgave you when you messed up, when you were sure you'd be judged. And this one is powerful. He delivered you from things you didn't even know were attacking you.
Wow. That idea of deliverance from unknown battles, that's a big one.
It is. And then there's the relational side. He stood by you and others walked away. He literally carried you when you didn't have the strength to take another step.
It's such a tangible, all-encompassing list. It's designed to make you realize that the foundation for your praise isn't theoretical. It's actually everywhere.
And the conclusion the source draws is that every single breath, every blessing, every victory, they're all his marvelous works. They leave this unmistakable trail of, as the source calls them, divine fingerprints.
So we have the decision to praise with our whole heart based on this undeniable history of God's works. And that praise demands a public declaration. So that brings us to the final piece. When praise and testimony come together, what are the big 3 benefits when you combine them?
When you activate both of those commitments at the same time, the sermon points to 3 monumental outcomes that they transform everything.
Okay, let's take them one by one. Outcome A, what happens to God in this process?
God is lifted high. Your praise does more than just make you feel better. The source says your praise literally becomes a throne for God's presence. It's referencing Psalm 22.3, the idea that God inhabits the praises of his people. So you're not just, sending nice words up. You are actively creating a spiritual environment for him to move.
That is a tangible result. Okay, so B, the second outcome. This one deals with the opposition with doubt.
B, the enemy is silenced. The source argues that nothing shuts the accuser's mouth faster or more effectively than your wholehearted worship mixed with your story. You're using the undeniable facts of your life to counter every lie, every doubt. It's the ultimate rebuttal.
And finally, C, the external impact of the world around you.
C, others are drawn to Christ. Your story stops being just about you and becomes a lifeline for someone else. It becomes a bridge for their salvation when they see the proof of God's work in your life. You're not just telling them the truth, you are showing them the truth.
This dual action, internal commitment, external declaration, leading to this victory, that's why the psalm has to start with praise. It's the catalyst for everything else.
It's that complete cycle of devotion leading to declaration. It establishes that spiritual posture that David modeled for us thousands of years ago.
Absolutely. So as we bring this deep dive to a close, the big takeaway from all this analysis is really a call to be intentional, to move beyond just, going through the motions.
It's a call to end that half-heartedness, to stop letting our feelings dictate our devotion. We have to move into deliberate, fact-based declaration. The conclusion gives us this really clear threefold declaration that just sums it all up.
And that declaration for you, listening right now, is a choice, a total commitment. It's saying, Lord, I choose to praise you.
Lord, I give you my whole heart.
And finally, Lord, I will tell of your marvelous works.
When you can truly commit to those three statements, you're embracing the entire spiritual framework that's laid out in just that one verse.
So here's the final thought for you to take with you to really consider as you move forward with this. Praise is your posture. Testimony is your responsibility. And God's marvelous works are your foundation. Always. Okay, let's unpack this. Today we are sinking our teeth into a deep dive based on it's truly provocative concept from our reading. This prophetic warning that when shepherds turn into mobsters, judgment is near.
It's such a modern way of framing a problem that is, it's ancient. And the material we looked at is so clear on this. You're not going to find the exact term pastor mobster in the Bible.
No, of course not.
But the prophetic books especially, they outline this specific kind of corruption in, painstaking detail. We're talking about spiritual leaders, people called to protect, but instead they use, they abuse, they control.
And ultimately devour the very people they were meant to serve.
Exactly.
And that's really our mission for this deep dive. We're going to define the characteristics of this corrupt leadership. We're using foundational texts, Ezekiel 34, Jeremiah 23, and John 10. And we're going to explore what the consequences are.
For the leader and for the flock.
Right. And for you listening, this isn't just some, generalized critique. It's a very specific scriptural warning that, it provides you with what you need for discernment.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, the urgency of this whole thing, it's right there from the start in the prophets. Jeremiah 23, verse 1 is it's a devastating opening. Woe to the shepherds who destroy and scatter the sheep of my pasture.
Wow.
And then you get maybe the most critical question in all of this from Ezekiel 34. Woe to the shepherds who feed themselves. Should not the shepherds feed the flock?
That distinction right there, that's the whole pivot. And a self-serving operator.
Absolutely. And the false shepherds, the mobsters in this analogy, they rise up inside the house of faith. They have the titles. They know all the language, but their allegiance, it's to themselves.
Understanding that is the essential first step.
It is.
So let's just jump straight into defining this figure, because our research gives us a really detailed character sketch. You've got this leader who, holiness, but they practice corruption. The description that really stood out to me was the deceit. They smile on Sunday, but deal in darkness on Monday.
That phrase, it just perfectly captures the internal contradiction. A mask. And what's underneath is this deep, deep self-interest. Our texts call it a pastor on the outside, mobster in the heart. And we need to get into the 4 specific behaviors that actually transition a leader from being a shepherd to being a mobster, because these are the practical things you can actually see.
Right. These are actions that go way beyond just like poor management. This is strategic abuse and control. Let's.
Okay, so the first is controlling people. This is all about using fear or even, charismatic manipulation. It's not about relying on faith or spiritual conviction.
So the main goal is just obedience to the leader.
Exactly. Obedience to the leader, not freedom in Christ. This leader creates systems designed to punish anyone who dissents or questions their authority.
Which leads right into the second one, which is probably the most visible sign of this kind of abuse, manipulating tithes and resources.
Yes. This is where the leader treats the church not as a community of believers, but as a personal resource, an internal revenue stream. And the material shows how this happens. It can be things like mandatory giving quotas or even public shaming of people who don't give enough. Or, and this is really dangerous, blurring the line between ministry funds and, their personal income. The money just flows one way.
It's fueling the leader's lifestyle, not the actual ministry.
Exactly. And that desire for money and control, it feeds right into the third behavior, building empires.
So this is where it's not a church anymore, it's a kingdom.
A personal kingdom. It's centered on their personality, their brand, not on the mission of Christ. Every decision, who they hire, how they expand, it's all focused on elevating the leader's platform. And here's the critical question, right? Where's the line between necessary growth and personal empire building?
That's a good question.
Well, according to our materials, the distinction is all about motivation and ownership. If the leader resists accountability and they make sure all authority flows right back to them, they're building an empire.
That makes perfect sense. If the whole institution can't function without that one personality, it's not an organization. It's a dependency system. Okay, now the fourth action. threatening and isolating. This one sounds the most spiritually destructive.
It is. This is the tactic of relationship destruction. It means threatening people who leave with, spiritual consequences or even social ruin. But what's even more damaging is isolating the congregants from anyone on the outside, from their own family, old friends, any source of information that might question the leader's total authority.
So you seal off the system.
You seal it off from reality. That's how the mobster shepherd keeps their control system intact.
Wow. When you lay out those 4 behaviors, control, manipulation, empire building, and isolation, they line up perfectly with the biblical archetypes the text mentioned. These are not new problems.
Not at all. I mean, the spiritual reality of exploitation, it's constant. These leaders are what the scripture calls wolves in sheep's clothing, or the hirelings from the Gospels, even the worthless shepherds from Zechariah. Our materials are just arguing that these modern actions are just an echo of that ancient corruption.
I was really struck by the detailed analysis of Ezekiel 34. I mean, it is the blueprint for self-service. Let's really dig into that.
Yeah.
Section 2, consumption versus compassion. Here's where it gets really interesting because the language gets so specific about how the exploitation actually works.
Ezekiel 34 it's devastating because it describes these 3 clear stages of self-consumption, not service. It tells a story of both economic and spiritual exploitation.
Okay, let's start with the most basic one. They eat the fat. What does our research say that represents?
It means the leader is prospering, both economically and spiritually, while the flock itself is starving. They're consuming the very best resources, financial and spiritual, that should be feeding the ministry. So they create this lack in the community while they enjoy abundance.
Okay, next one. They clothe themselves with the wool.
This moves beyond just, immediate consumption. This is about using the resources of the people, their loyalty, their money, their time, their labor, to boost their own prestige and comfort and visibility. They're taking the protective covering of the flock for their own self-aggrandizement. They're literally wearing the flock's success as their personal uniform.
And then, the most tragic description. This one needs some careful defining for us today. They slaughter the fatlings.
Yeah, this is the critical point. Slaughtering the fatlings isn't about neglecting the weak. It's about actively destroying the healthy, the talented, the successful members of the flock.
The ones who are thriving.
Exactly, because those are the individuals who often have the confidence or the insight to question or expose the corruption. So it's reputation destruction, it's emotional abuse, or financial ruin aimed at anyone who threatens the mobster's authority. They eliminate the strongest members.
The ones who could lead a resistance.
Precisely.
So the conclusion here is that the mobster pastor is just entirely focused on demanding, controlling, and consuming the flock. And the texts highlight that this system requires creating a loyalty to the pastor that's actually stronger than loyalty to Jesus,
Right.
which the material specifically calls a form of demonic control.
Yes. That spiritual manipulation, that's the foundation of their power.
Yeah.
But we have to contrast this whole self-serving model with the only true standard, and that's Jesus, the Good Shepherd, as defined in John 10. The difference in motivation and action, that's the litmus test.
Give us that contrast. Make it stark for us.
Okay. While mobster shepherds drain, intimidate, mislead, and live off the flock, Jesus feeds, protects, loves, and ultimately dies for the flock. The distinction is all about ownership and sacrifice.
And the texts clarify this using that concept of the hireling. That analogy is just so vital.
It is. Think of the hireling as like a seasonal worker, someone who gets paid to do a job but has no real emotional or personal investment in the outcome. John chapter 10 shows us the crucial difference in action. A hireling sees the wolf coming, and what does he do? He leaves the sheep and flees.
Right. Because they're not his sheep.
Exactly, he doesn't own them. When danger shows up, the hireling clocks out. But conversely, the source material asserts that the Good Shepherd always rescues his sheep from wolf leadership because he owns them, he knows them, he is intrinsically linked to their welfare.
And that sets the standard for how we should be assessing leadership today. But it raises this really practical and crucial question that the material tackles. What happens when corrupt leadership creates a culture of untouchability? You know, when they use spiritual language, don't question the man of God, don't touch the anointed, just obey to create this spiritual shield. They actually believe they're above reproach.
And this is the dramatic climax of the entire prophetic warning. When shepherds become mobsters and they start using scripture to enforce their impunity, the texts say that God himself steps in. God declares war against the shepherd, not the sheep.
War against the shepherd. Let's look at Ezekiel 34.10 said. That's cited as God's declaration, right?
It is. And it's just this stunning promise of divine accountability. Behold, I am against the shepherds. I will deliver my flock from their mouths. The promise is crystal clear. God takes personal responsibility for removing this abusive system.
And the process of that judgment, it's laid out explicitly. So the congregation isn't left in doubt. God says, I will remove them, I will expose them, and I will judge them. And the critical detail is that he does this publicly.
Exactly. The judgment isn't a private matter. It's a public demonstration for the sake of the abused flock and for the purity of the church. And this connects so powerfully to that key scriptural principle, that judgment. It doesn't start in the world. It begins in the house of God. That's from 1 Peter. God begins with those who claim to represent him, which is, simultaneously a terror for the abuser.
And a massive relief for the abused, for the flock who's been told they have no right to question authority.
It fundamentally dismantles that whole idea of the untouchable leader.
Right. But the story doesn't end there with just exposure and removal. The prophets always include a promise of healing, of stability.
That promise of restoration is so critical to complete the picture. Once the corrupt shepherds are dealt with, Jeremiah 23.4 confirms it. God promises to raise a pure generation of leaders who will feed them, so that the people shall fear no more, nor be dismayed, nor shall they be lacking.
That speaks to true stability. Leaders who love, not control, who protect, not exploit, who serve, not manipulate. It's an assurance to the listener that God's plan is always for the care and the nourishment of his flock.
The fire of God, as our materials describe it, that's what separates the true servant from the false mobster. The ultimate distinction is, well, it's simple. A true pastor is a servant. A false pastor is a mobster. And that fire tests their motives, their actions, and where their loyalty truly lies.
So, bringing this all back to you, the listener, our materials issue a direct call for discernment. We're told to stop automatically respecting titles and start, testing the spirits and the actions.
This is the hour for action. You are called to watch, to pray, to test the spirits, to discern leadership based on these specific scriptural definitions. The text specifically advises, do not tolerate spiritual abuse and do not bow to manipulation regardless of the perceived spiritual authority of that person.
The ultimate takeaway here is profound. Follow Jesus, not personalities. The church belongs to Christ, not to men who are trying to build their own empires on the backs of other people.
And that leads us to the final provocative thought we're left with. The texts state that when shepherds become mobsters, heaven steps in, judgment moves, truth prevails. So consider this. If a system of leadership has prioritized building an empire, consuming resources, isolating people, resisting all accountability over making disciples, what signs of divine intervention and exposure are maybe already becoming visible in that structure today?
It's a powerful challenge. It forces us to look beyond the facade and to acknowledge that, regardless of the corruption we might see, the final authority and ownership, it rests with the one who willingly laid down his life for the flock.
The church belongs to Christ, not to men. And that promise right there is the foundation for all hope and restoration.
I send you for a prayer for you. Jesus love you. Have faith in Jesus, okay? I'm the same way. I've been hurting. I'm struggling. I still keep moving forward. I have faith in Jesus. God bless you. Jesus love you. Take care. Subscribe.